It took me 3 days to make my first ever art piece, and I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. The first thing I did was to figure out the measurement I'd be using, and since I'd be using a stroke board, this particular one had a width of 30 inches, so all I needed was a length size. I finally settled for a 30 by 20 inches, even though I wished I had something bigger I could work with. The next step was to make sketches of the patterns. The paper I used I measured as 7.5 by 5 inches. This was achieved by dividing the original size by 4, so it makes it easier to recreate the small version of these patterns onto the big board, because doing otherwise would just feel like you forcing a rectangle into a square hole. After a couple attempts, I got the patterns right, then I shaded it out so that I don't get confused when cutting out the pieces. And once I was done, it's now time to cut out the base. Picking out the smoothest surface, I trimmed the board using the 30 by 20 inches measurement. I actually got 3 straw boards in total at 1000 naira each. After cutting out the base from the first one, the remaining 2 I still trimmed down to a 30 by 20 inches size. I glued the remaining 2 together. Now this glued one is what we'll be using to cut out the pieces. The reason why I trimmed it down is because the patterns need to be able to fit on the base. You don't want your patterns to be too small or too big, and why I actually glued it together was because I wanted the patterns to give a good definition. But I've got to warn you though, if you're going to recreate this, sketching the patterns was the easy part. Now cutting it out on the other hand was an absolute nightmare. It took me 3 whole days to cut out the pieces and a whole day of rest because my whole body was just so numb from all the pain. I found that it was easier to cut out the pieces with a cutter instead of a scissors because of how thick the board actually is. Please don't forget, for the brush you're going to use to apply the gum, make sure that you trim it down because the long bristles of the brush makes it harder to apply the gum. For the one you're going to be using to apply your paint, you really don't need to trim it down at all. You also want to stay away from fans or AC when applying your gum because that breeze would just congeal your gum very fast. And after placing all the pieces firmly, I'll be using this white acrylic paint which I got for 5000 naira to finish up. I was meant to mix it with a little water, but I think I added way too much water, so I ended up coating my art piece 3 times in order to get a full coverage, and I let each coat dry up before applying the next coat. I really did plan on putting this on the wall, but after considering the fact that I'm always rearranging my living space and moving around my furnitures, I think putting it up on the wall would be a really bad idea. So I think I'm just gonna let it sit at the corner. So how did I do, and would you recreate this?